Welcome, everyone, to another edition of CelloConnect. I am Pete Romney, coming from St. George, and during today's CelloConnect, we're going to talk to the inimitable, the one and only Dr. Ka Wai Yu. Ka Wai, how you doing
Hello.
today?
Thanks for inviting me here. So honored to be joining you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So, Ka Wai, you and I go back a little ways. We're stand partners for the Southwest Symphony Orchestra, and we do a few things together every year, including working with the Cello Society of Southern Utah, and then our own little quartet, the Achezo Cello Quartet,
That's
where
right.
we play just wherever we can,
Yep.
which is a lot of fun.
It's a
So
lot
yes,
of
thank you for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun. So why don't we start off by if you could just tell us a little bit about your cello background. What first got you into playing the cello?
Yeah, that's it's an interesting story. I grew up in a musical family. My mother is actually a vocalist, and also play the piano and teach music. My brothers all play instruments. My father, even though he was a professor in science, he also played the piano, accompanying my mom singing.
Hmm.
And so naturally, I was, trying to, my parents want to pick an instrument for me. But that was actually interesting story about my family who stayed, we stayed in Europe for actually a short moment in Paris.
Hmm.
My father has a job there, and I was 2 years old, like, and my mom started to worry about me because I couldn't speak. Like, I'm not couldn't speak. I didn't speak, and it was like, oh, this child must have some problem or something. But it turned out that my mom talked to his friend Ming Yun Zheng, who's a cellist from Hong Kong. He was studying there, and it's like he told my mom, said, no, Ka Wai was talking to me all the time. I would just lean on when I saw him, this teacher, and I'll be just listening to him practice, and then was really enjoying it. Um, and it turned out that maybe it's because like I was in a new like foreign country, and my neighbor was speaking Japanese and English, and then everybody else is speaking French. My family is speaking Chinese, so it's like, this kid just get confused, and and then this wonderful cellist teacher, oh, this is a big instrument, so I love him, love, listening to him play, and then that's when I start talking and stuff like that. So we talk about when I go back to Hong Kong, then we will start cello lessons, and we did. So that's my first cello teacher. Ming Yun Zheng was Hong Kong Philharmonic player. So, and anyway, long story short, and I keep as a kid. Then I, of course, a little bit rebellious, didn't like to practice, and but one thing changed me when I was in middle high school. High school, I was invited to play in the orchestra, um, and I began to um, realize that I could be very important. I play an important role. I could actually, join other people, and that gave me the purpose to keep playing the cello, and I did continue from then on, and and then eventually, current study in college, and continue my musical studies that way.
That's an amazing story. That's great. I had no
I
idea.
always love sharing with people. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's all like, yeah, everybody has a very different story, unique
Yeah,
story.
for sure. Um, so next question, and it's just based on what I know of your musical background. Is you've spent quite a bit of time studying early classical music, Baroque and Renaissance era
Yes.
compositions. Do you want to talk to us just a little bit about that?
Yeah. So early music, didn't mean that I wake up really early or something.
Although I'm sure you do.
They used to say, some people are just joking, like, "Oh yeah, you get old and you really like early music, so you wake up early." But we were trying to look into music, um, old music, from the way from the lens of the composer or from the performer back then, with a historical context in mind. So, say if I'm playing a piece by Bach or Vivaldi from the Baroque period, I would look at well, what kind of instrument I would be playing in Baroque period in Bach's time. What kind of strings, what kind of bow hole, or what kind of trills, or do I do any vibrato and stuff like that. So it is actually, in a way, it's a new way looking at old music, actually. When, the interesting about thing is, like, when you have old things will new things will become old, right? One day. But when you look at the old things again, new things, bring it back again, it feels new. And so that's just the way of looking in things. Try to look for authenticity,
Mm.
basically. And one, I will give you some analogies, like food. Everybody loves food. You know, um, Imagine you are, eating burger with your chopsticks. Or you go to a fancy French restaurant. You probably wouldn't use your bare hands to eat. And that's the thing. People didn't realize that. Well, I was playing Bach's. Some people just play Bach's with the vibrato that you'll be playing for Rachmaninoff. Um, and and it's actually similar in that case. You probably would enjoy that, using that the other playing Bach with the Bach context in mind, and playing Rachmaninoff with the Rachmaninoff um, style, and the passion, the way, the technique that will help you do that better. So it's um, it's interesting. It's like a journey, looking into, and we also, through this, we also look at, maybe, possibly manuscripts, like facsimile of the
Mm.
um, composers. So it allowed you to see more details and look at what, oh yeah, this marking is actually not original by, Brahms. It could be somebody who added it later. And so, I look at it as more like a discovery, curiosity, because music is all about, originality. And it's so easy to think, like, oh yeah, some people would say, like, yeah, we do early music, you must be really stubborn, you're really thinking of the old way of doing old things. um, and but in fact, on the other hand, is actually, it's a fun project that you try to look, oh yeah, what was the composer thinking,
Mm.
instead of what I was thinking, because I'm not, well, by the way, unless I'm playing my own music, right? Which well, I did play some of my own music, but if I'm playing Beethoven's music, why don't I should look at Beethoven's, why, what kind of music that he was in mind when he wrote it. So this is just a fun way of looking at things.
That's really interesting. So it kind of gives you a peek into the mind of the composer, like when
Yes.
they're writing it. So you can really kind of get to know Bach really well, or Corelli, or you know Vivaldi, or any of these kind of early classical Baroque composers. Do you have a preferred composer from that era?
From any era, or just like Baroque, or
Um, I'd say anything Baroque or Renaissance era.
I well, obviously there are a lot of great composers. I do love Bach, J.S. Bach, and obviously he wrote the cello suites and the Gama sonatas, and a lot of great, cantatas, and orchestral music like Brandenburg concertos, and a lot of great pieces that cellists enjoy. Um, but also his legacy that affect, like, so many composers that I love later, like, Brahms and Schumann or Beethoven, that I really enjoy, all came from that roots. But I also love Marais, French composer who wrote for the gamba that I play viola da gamba, um, and it's just very. I like French. If you talk about Baroque music, the French way, interesting, like the taste, the kind of fine. Um, I wish I could talk to you about. Um, yeah, that could be a great lecture topic. But the ornaments, the how you do different ornaments, ornamentation,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and it's the French opera and the they call it notes inegal or unequal rhythm. That actually, like for example, like you look at a piece of music, you're supposed to play slightly different from the written rhythm. Basically swing it. Yeah, it's anyway.
Okay.
That's a little too detailed, but um, yeah, a lot. Anyway, so and Handel's music it's always cosmopolitan and touch on so many different styles.
So here's a question about Bach. Do you have in mind a recording of the Bach suites that you feel really kind of hit the nail on the head, like really kind of do a great job of sort of getting into the music as Bach would have heard it?
Ultimately, I think playing Bach importantly is to find your own
Mm.
way of interpreting as a performer. But of course, as a listener, there are several versions additions that I like quite a lot, like the one by Anna Bylsma,
Oh, okay.
the Dutch cellist, and the cellist who came not long ago here for our cello festival, Tanya Tompkins. Pieter Wilsbury, another Dutch cellist, had some very unique interpretation of that. There's some um, uh, what should I say? Just like very honest interpretation. Like instead of trying to be because nowadays there are a lot of performers trying to be like perfection, like as their main outcome, main goal. So they try to be very careful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they didn't do much exaggerate things or musically. You don't try to shape things as much. They just don't want to get out of two notes or scratchy notes. But Casals wasn't, at least at his from what I know about him, he didn't have that problem. He just very honest and like this is the way I play and that um, genuine genuinity, and it went through the music. But I like Yo-Yo Ma. Um, in at least one of the recordings that he'd explore Baroque more, and then he'd go back to more modern ways. Interestingly, he like used Bach and collaborate with artists. Remember,
Oh,
inspired,
the Inspired by Bach. Yeah,
yeah, with
came out in
Anderson,
'99.
you know. But Anna Buzma was the one, if you're talking about Baroque cello playing. Um, I think Japte Linden, who I have had a chance to study in one summer, it was also fantastic in his Bach as well. So that those are just some of those recordings that I enjoyed.
What you said a second ago was really interesting about connecting with the composer. I call this series CelloConnect through no design of my own. I think everyone that I've interviewed has talked about using the cello to connect either to other people or to themselves in a new way, or things like that. And I think it's really interesting to take the time with early pieces of music and try to connect to the composer in a really unique way, like you're talking about. Doing the research and figuring out exactly how they would have heard the music. And it can really deepen your understanding of
Yeah.
yeah, that little bit of history.
In fact, I think you brought out an important point, like connect to the composer, and that actually could apply to new music as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and I have been doing new music also, like with living composers, and that you would be talking if you were playing a piece by Peter Romney. You will be interviewing him like right now and talk to you. Hey, what would you like to play? Want me to play like the way you play, or like and then you will be asking me what kind of technique you can do if you're not a cellist. And basically that's the same idea of trying to you know except that Bach could not talk to me right now, but I could look at things that he left, like his manuscripts or, his conversation, written letters with other composers, or what the cellist at his time would be doing. So
Or I'd love it if you would play something for us. I don't know if you'd want to play it on your regular cello or show us a little bit of history.
yeah, I actually brought my Baroque cello, 5 string violoncello piccolo. Will you be interested to look at that?
Awesome. That sounds great.
So this is violoncello piccolo. That's right. That like the piccolo, like flute. So it's the higher, smaller a little bit, slightly smaller. This is about 7/8 size, and usually 7/8 to 3/4 size of a modern full size cello. That's the largest they would be doing. Um, the difference from the regular four string cello is with the top E string. So we have that. Yeah, for the audience who are less familiar with Baroque cellos, there. By the way, Baroque cellos is not necessarily 5 string. This is particularly a violoncello piccolo 5 string cello, but a lot of Baroque cellos also 4 string. But several elements you want to know is that the fingerboard is shorter. So this is like a big, long, space here, and the fingerboard here, the neck here is usually thicker.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, I'm not using end pin. I was just holding it with my legs, and you probably can't see from the screen, but it's the gut strings. And obviously, the bow also is a Baroque bow, a little bit different. The shape coming down here instead of so even from the frog to the tip is more frog heavy.
Mm.
So that kind of sound, it's you can't sustain as much, but it's also it cannot project as much. But on the other hand, it's sweet and very human voice like. Um, so yeah, it's interesting, and it's but on the other hand, it's actually not easier. No, in a way, it's easier in a way that it doesn't have to go all high register. But when you have an extra string,
Yeah.
it's different with the angle, and you easily hit the wrong string.
Mm.
Like my D string now has becomes the middle string,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and it changed the color of the string as well. The A is not as bright, because the E string becomes the brightest string, and then the low string have to go more this way. It's but it's I learned to be flexible about trying that, and I also play the gamba as you mentioned, so it's also different. So
Yeah.
it's good to be able to explore. JS Box specifically asked for a 5 string instrument for his cello suite number 6, the last one. And while modern cellists were trying to play it on a regular 4 string cello and make it work, and but it's refreshing for me to actually play it on a 5 string cello, and a lot of the chords and a lot of the thing just flow more naturally and without like forcing, like kind of struggling rather than like enjoying dancing, or rather than trying to do another technical study.